It is the most wonderful time of the year, and I'm not talking about the holidays. We are at Florida International Rally and Motorsport Park with our 2022 Mach 1. If you guys remember last year, we had a Twister Orange Mach 1 out here testing stock versus our suspension, and ultimately with the competition package you can get through Steeda performance vehicles. We took that same exact competition package, put it on this 2022 Mach 1, albeit it's a little bit hotter this year, totally different conditions. We took this Mach 1 out. We're going to show you how everything shook out and ultimately what we're testing today. Very excited, the DSC Sport MagneRide Controller with the Steeda High-Performance Calibration. Again, very excited. We've been working months and months on this, hundreds of man-hours developing this particular calibration to see how it performs not only on the street, but also out on track. Let's check it out. We're back at the studio, and before we go over all the track footage and break down the numbers for you, we want to tell you about this new product. This is the DSC Sport MagneRide Controller for your MagneRide equipped Mustang with the Steeda High-Performance Calibration. We've worked hard here over the past 9 months, hundreds of man-hours and R&D on this calibration for your Mustang, and we're excited to tell you about it. This controller will fit 2016 plus GT350s, 2018 plus Mustang Ecoboost and GTs with optional MagneRide, 2020 plus GT500s and Mach 1s and Bullets with MagneRide equipped. So basically, if you have MagneRide equipped on your Mustang, this controller is for you. We did design this controller around our dual rate springs and full suspension package, but I'm happy to report that if you have anything but an Ecoboost and GT with optional MagneRide, this controller will work perfectly with your setup. It is a super easy plug and play installation. The factory MagneRide controller is actually going to be replaced with this DSC Sport MagneRide controller. It goes in the passenger side rear of your trunk. Again, it's a very quick 5 to 10 minute installation. If you have a subwoofer, it may be a little bit longer. And again, once it's in, you'll honestly never even know it's there until you start driving. We calibrated this controller specifically to work with all the driving modes in your car. That means just like the factory MagneRide, you're going to have your own dedicated normal mode, sport mode, and track mode, just like you have in your GT 350, 500, or Mach 1. But what we did up and above the factory MagneRide is taking this to the next level. In normal mode, you'll actually be a little bit more comfortable cruising down the highway. It's not going to be floaty, but again, it's more comfortable than the factory setup. Then you bump it to sport mode. If you're ready to take on some canyon roads or some back roads, it's the perfect combination of cruising down the highway and pushing it on a back road if you want a little bit more oomph. And then track mode, that's our favorite mode here at Steeda. You take it out on the autocross track, you're really pushing it on a back road, or out on the road course, it's all out performance from there. This is a locked device. That means the calibration you receive can't be changed, but rest assured, it's an easy installation and we did the hard work for you. We've tested this on a Steeda Mach 1, a GT350, as well as a GT500 as well. So you really can't go wrong. It's an awesome package, whether you're cruising down the highway or ripping up the track. To speak a little bit more about the R&D and our track time today, we have Jamie Bell here. Jamie, we've been working since December on this project. Tell us a little bit about how we, handled the street testing and some of the autocross testing.
We started out with street testing, setting up different elements, course elements, in the environment we have here to do it with, trying to replicate track activities as much as possible before we actually took a car to a track with this system on it. We wanted some idea of what the adjustability was going to be and what we were going to expect once we started driving the car on the track at track speeds.
And revolving our heads around this programming and everything that goes into this controller was a lot of fun. We worked with steering, pitch, yaw, brake, throttle, and ultimately the G-force accelerometer to determine how the shocks react to certain situations. So we had to basically do everything we could to replicate all of those situations, both on track and off track. I would say that the track calibration was probably the easiest to develop. The street one was the hardest to perfect. So one of the best parts about our Steeda High Performance Calibration and the controller itself is the repeatability side of it. So we started developing this on the GT350, and then ultimately, honestly, what I was most concerned about is pulling the controller out of the 350 and putting it in the Mach 1. They're two totally different cars. The GT350 had over 30,000 miles on it, whereas the Mach 1 was brand new. So my concern when we took that controller out and put it into the Mach 1 ultimately was, okay, is it going to behave the same way? And the best part is, it totally did, completely. I mean, we hopped in that Mach 1 and it was like, honestly, it felt like you were in the same car.
Yeah, they had a very, very similar feel. The ride quality was the same on both. The handling characteristics were very same. It helped that they had the same springs and sway bars. And during the track testing, autocross testing that we did, we were on race tires, and the tires we were using between the two cars either were the same tires or comparable.
And the coolest part about this controller and the calibration is that it has a pretty wide array of what it can adhere to. And what I mean by that is we developed this on our dual rate springs, but it will work for basically anything but a GT and Ecoboost stock spring package. So if you have a 350 with a stock spring package or a Mach 1 or a 500 even, this will work and you will feel the benefits. Now, if you throw this on there and you're like, hey, I want more, but I have the stock springs, then Steeda dual rates, right?
Hey, you just upgrade to Steeda dual rates. We have springs to cover all the different makes and models with MagneRide now, including the GT500. We've came out with the springs specifically for the GT500. The system works with it just as well as it does with the Mach 1 and the GT350 and the Bullets.
So without further ado, let's talk about our track day at the firm, confirming that we can drop 1.5 seconds, almost what, 2 seconds, on the Steeda High-Performance Calibration with this DSC Sport controller. Jamie, you ran a 119 with our Steeda suspension on the Mach 1 and the factory controller. How did it feel out there?
It felt good. It was comfortable. It was very similar to the orange Mach 1 that we tested with last year when we were testing the base suspension package, and it was very similar. Temperature was a little hotter. Actually, it was about 5 degrees hotter, and it made a big difference in how much grip the track actually had. We were happy to get a 119 with the stock controller.
Obviously, after testing the DSC in factory form last year, you know, the MagneRide, we were relatively happy with it, but it did have a little bit of trouble, especially in the S's with those curbs, you know, getting the car pretty high up off the ground until you're, you know, coming into turn 7. But once we threw the DSC Sport controller on there with our calibration, it was great to see that all that testing and R&D validated with a 117. Jamie, how did it feel jumping literally back to back, dropping that DSC controller? How did it feel?
It wasn't a night and day difference, but it was enough difference that you could tell the car had a lot more control and it had more grip. Through the S's, like you said, it's pretty rough. If you're trying for lap times, you're going across top of the curbing. The car was able to keep all the tires on the ground, which is important for, you know, grip and lap times. The slower speed turn at the end of the S's, it had a little bit more grip. I was able to get a better run coming out of that. Mile per hour between most of the runs showed that I was usually 1 to 3 mile an hour faster at the end of that straightaway, able to carry more speed through the bank turn 8. somewhat of an intimidating turn because it's got a concrete banked wall on the outside of it. So you want to make sure that you're comfortable with what the car's doing. For whatever reason, didn't have the same mile per hour at the end of the longest straight, but the speed through turn 10, turn 1, which is essentially a big double apex turn. I had more mile an hour through that turn with DSC than I did with the stock controller. Made a big difference in the lap time. There's a lot of pavement irregularities, and the car handled those extremely well. You had more grip in the back, corner exit, than you did with the stock controller, which made a big difference in how much speed you could get off of a turn and how much speed you could get going towards the next turn.
Going back to the autocross and our R&D there, one of the weaknesses we found, we were starting to push the limits of the factory MagneRide, and where the car kind of fell short was mid-corner into corner exit. The car would actually start pushing as you get on the throttle. And the reason for that is the shocks just didn't have enough oomph to get the car back up in the air and keep the car flat going around the corner. So with the calibration, that's something we took in mind to give the front a little bit more beef, and that really shows, especially after turn 7 into turn 8. Jamie was really able to carry a lot more speed into that turn because that front end had bite.
Yeah, the front end had a lot more bite in that turn, but in the higher speed turns, the car stayed more composed. The front didn't start washing out as you started accelerating. It had grip to be able to pretty much put the power down. The back end stayed under. It didn't try to step out too much unless you just were a little bit overexcited with the accelerator, which is gonna happen. You're at the track.
Very easy with the 5-liter under the hood, but on the front end, that's what we focused on. In the rear, corner exit was super important, especially with the dual rate springs and that higher secondary rate. We knew that we really had to dial in how that car performed on corner exit, and specifically how well it was able to put power down. And Jamie, you said it.
Well, with all of our autocross testing, we did all of that on 200 treadwear, basically track tires. They're still DOT street tires, but they're, for all intents and purposes, competition tires. And we were doing it all mostly in national competition. And the car, we used that to dial out most of the oversteer that we had and get rid of some of the understeer conditions on corner exit, where when you start getting on the throttle, the back end of the car essentially overpowers the front.
And if you're curious about what parts are on the Steeda Mach 1, just click the link in the description. You can see all the parts we have installed on this Mach 1. I mean, camber, we were at what, 3.5 degrees? Negative?
We were at 3.3 in the front, 1.7 in the rear. I used the same alignment specs that I used on the previous car, the orange Mach 1, trying to keep everything as even as possible.
The tires we ran on were Goodyear Eagle F1 Supercar 3R tires. They were actually the same exact tires that we used last year on the orange car. We did have brand new tires to test out. But unfortunately,
we had a little on-track incident with those, and we lost a couple of valve stems. And it
something we've never experienced before.
Something we've never had happen before. They were new valve stems, but we lost them. Not exactly sure how or why, but it happened, and that cut short our testing with the newer tires. We went back to the old tires, and quite frankly, they still gripped.
Oh yeah,
just as well as they did when they were new. So we were still happy with how they performed.
And needless to say, those Hawk brake pads did exactly what they were supposed to do, get that car locked down, but in turn generate a lot of heat. That melts the valve stems. But we're able to throw the old set on and still do pretty darn good on the times. I'm confident, I'm sure you are too, that if we had those new tires on, we would have seen better times here.
We probably could have been at least a second faster on the new tires versus the old tires. They had a lot more grip. They were new compared to a year old, but we ran with
what we had.
With what we had, we did what we could with what we had. The biggest takeaway from it using the older tires is most people aren't going to go to a track day every time with a brand new set of tires. They're going to reuse their tires, and it's more of a real world test. If you have tires that are a little bit older, already been used, is it going to be faster?
at the end of the day, even on the older tires, we were still shaving nearly 2 seconds off with the high-performance calibration alone, and that's awesome to see. That's the validation we needed.
Yep, that's a real-world test that anybody that wants this on their car can be able to feel.
The best part is it's street friendly too. So this really is going to increase the driving experience, both track times and cruising down the road in pretty much all situations. So if you have any questions about it, please comment below. Let us know your thoughts. We want to do more things like this, and let us know what you want to see. Hit us up at Steeda.com for all your MagneRide springs, suspension components, S550 Mustang, all other Fords, you name it. Hit that like and subscribe button, the notification bell, and don't forget the most important thing.
Speed matters.